We're situated near the town of Duel, on the Samaria Mountains, an area which in the past belonged to the tribe of Ephraim, which sat in these very fertile areas. What is special about this specific location is that it overlooks the coastal plain of Israel, where 70% of the Israeli society lives in the major cities. And we can see from here how when you sit on these mountains, you completely control everything. Looking from here to the north and to the south, we can see on one side all the way to Haifa, to Hedera. And on the other side, to the south, we see Ashkelon and Ashdod. Many times I drive from Caesarea along the shore to Tel Aviv. And when I drive, I look to the east and I see the mountains of Samaria. And then I say to myself, okay, but if I can see Samaria mountains, this means the mountains can see me. And they see me much better. And it's enough that you have one anti-tank missile unit sitting on these mountains, and that's it. They can shoot me off the road on the coast. From here, you can shoot a missile directly into a building in Tel Aviv. You can shut down all the main roads of Israel. Road 2 along the coast, Road 4 and Road 6. These are the three major roads in the coastal plain of Israel. All of them are controlled from these mountains. As we speak, an airplane just flew above us on the way to Ben Gurion Airport. One of the most dangerous things that can happen to us, terrorists with anti-aircraft missiles that might shoot down an airplane with 300 people on it. And once something like that happens, Israel is completely isolated. Nobody will fly here. Nobody will take the chance. So this is not a reality we can have. We need full security control, and this full security control is based on massive presence of Jewish towns all over Judea and Samaria. This is why we need to be very strong on these mountains. We need to build them for economical reasons, for security reasons. This is the place of birth of our nation, here on these mountains. All our history is here. This is what gives us the sense of rightness to fight again and again to protect our country. Our Declaration of Independence talks about fulfilling the prophecies of our prophets. When we see millions of Jews that came back to their land along the coast, this is very exciting. But seeing Jews turning back to the birthplace of the Jewish people, to the mountains of Judea and Samaria, this is the fulfillment of the prophecies. Today we in IDSF educate the young generation and the general public, but also decision makers, about the huge importance of Judea and Samaria from a national security point of view, from a heritage point of view, from the values point of view. And we encourage people to come and visit, because only when you stand here, everything becomes clear. You see exactly how important this place is.
Thank you very much. I don't have to come and visit, that's where I live. I live in Duel. Okay, until the presentation comes up, I'm a member of the IDSF. It's a group of military experts from all different security branches, from the army, from the police, from the Shin Bet, from the Mossad. Most of them, over 90% of them still hold relative jobs as reserve officers. So we also supply facts on different issues pertaining to security and national security. And that's in a nutshell what the IDSF is all about. I was asked to talk about this two-state solution, the security implications of the Palestinian statehood for the state of Israel and beyond. And the first thing I want to do is to change the subject. Because I think when we talk about a two-state solution, that means it's a solution. And actually, we should talk about a two-state proposal. Because it can be many, many things, but it's not a solution. And I think it's very important to change the narrative. let's for one sec, when you see a map, we don't really realize how small Israel is. I was once in the United States, and I asked somebody, tell me, do you know how large Israel is? He said, I know, it's a very small country. It's the size of Texas. But actually, when you take a look and try to compare it to Holland, Holland is 1.9 larger than Israel. When you take a look at Israel without Judea and Samaria, you can see how wide it is on a map of Holland. And I'm sure most of you came from Schiphol to The Hague. You can see how it's much, the trip from Amsterdam to Hague is much greater than most of the width of Israel. And for those who are less familiar, this part and this part is Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. Okay? So this is to get some proportion of what we're talking about. Now, before I continue, let's try to imagine that we're not, today is not the 2nd of July. Let's pretend today is the September 1st. And I'm going to try to, now being September 1st, I'm trying to describe an imaginary attack from the Hamas. An attack on 21 communities, 850 dead soldiers, dead civilians, slaughter, rape, and many of them have their bodies burnt or mutilated. The 143rd Division, which is supposed to guard the border, the southern border, is neutralized. 370 soldiers and security officers killed. 250 hostages taken. The Hamas reached the city of Ofakim, which is 20 kilometers inside the border. And Israel's defenses, which is based on the state-of-the-art technology, and all collapsed. And if we're trying to remember, we're standing here on the 1st of September. If I would bring this scenario, you'd probably say it's scarcely credible, very unconvincing, and probably serving some political agenda. But it happened. Exactly what I mentioned before. And now let's go back to the 2nd of July. If I would bring this scenario as a reference scenario in an army exercise, the chances are I would be advised to find another position. I should be treated for PTSD, not post-trauma stress disorder, but pre-trauma stress disorder. And the question is, how did this happen? We can talk about this for hours, but I have 25 minutes, so I'll just mention. It's when the security is based on technology and machine intelligence, neglecting human, visint, asint, which is human intelligence, visual intelligence, open source intelligence. When we look at the enemy, talking about their intentions, which we think that we know, and not about their capabilities, and not really understanding who the enemy is. Now, before I get the first thing, when you make an army plan, you talk about the geography. So let's talk a bit about the geography and the difference between the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria. The border between Gaza and Israel is about 55 kilometers. The border on the Green Line is about 320 kilometers. Gaza has a 12-kilometer border with Egypt, and Judea and Samaria has a 120-kilometer border with Jordan. And for those who aren't familiar with Jordan, is lately on Iran's wish list. And if you can imagine the amount of arms that was smuggled in from Egypt to Gaza, you can just on a 12-kilometer border, you can imagine how much arms can be smuggled on a 120-kilometer border. Gaza is a plateau, and Judea and Samaria is situated on the high grounds, geographically, like we saw in the movie, in the video, which totally controls the coastal front. This is a picture from a balcony in Peduel. And just that you should understand the difference of the height, this is from my house in Peduel to Tel Aviv. It's about 23 kilometers. The X is what used to be the Green Line, and you can see the difference in the plateau even from the Green Line to where I live. In other words, everybody who sits, who's standing here controls not very far, all the way to Tel Aviv. But let's say you're not a Tel Aviv man. Let's say you're a Jerusalem man. But the chances are you're going to have to fly into Ben Gurion Airport. This is from my house in Peduel, and this is Ben Gurion Airport. Okay? It's about 15 kilometers. Again, this is the Green Line, and you see the difference of height between from Peduel, what you saw in the movie, where I live, to the Green Line, and to Ben Gurion Airport. In other words, the geography can support a two-state proposal. Now let's go back for a second and see what the implications of a similar invasion that actually happened on October 7th to living in Judea and Samaria. We're talking not of 30 breaches, but tens of breaches on the Green Line, minutes away from cities which are on the Green Line. Road number 6 would be captured. That means there would be no ability to bring reinforcements to Israel. Jerusalem would be attacked from 3 directions. Ben Gurion Airport closed, where the nearest international airport is near Eilat, more than 200 kilometers away. There are other things, water. All the mountain aquifer where most of Israel's water comes from would be in Palestinians' hand. It would be an ecological disaster because the sewage from the West Bank would be flowing into Israel. This is a definite existential threat. It shouldn't come to a surprise for anybody. Because when people chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, that means there's no Israel. Now when you take a look at the pit, just to try to give a picture, take a look. I took the 20 kilometers to Ofakim. That's where the Palestinian region. I said, okay, what would happen if they would go 20 kilometers from the West Bank? So you take a look. Here I advise them to take boots because they'd be in the water. Jerusalem would easily be cut off. And you can see with the Afula, and this is Haifa. In other words, it's something that would, if it would be a similar attack, it would be a very existential threat to Israel. But take a look at this picture. This picture is a tank on the border. How many soldiers do you see here?
This is correct.
Okay, no soldiers, maybe one. These innocent civilians, they have guns. These kids, they're kids. In other words, the attack wasn't only made by Hamas Nukhba terrorists, but hundreds, if not thousands of civilians, about at least 1,500 civilians and children came, and the members of these tanks were all killed, their bodies burned, and their bodies taken captive in Gaza till this day. So now, when we want to deal with the aspects of a two-state solution, where the chances are one state would be a Palestinian state, and the second state, with right of return, would change its names from Israel to Ismail or Islamiel, which would deal with both types of with the meaning. Yeah. Okay, it will be a whole different Israel, and we should talk about 3 different aspects, or actually 3 and one more aspect, which will be which I'll finish my presentation. The first is the military aspect. The second, the Palestinian leadership, and the third, the civilians. Number 1, a border which is on the Green Line is impossible to defend by any military standard. In every military school around the world, they teach the basics of any defense is depth. Israel here will have on the Green Line will have no depth at all. The settlements, in my eyes, contribute to peace and are not an obstacle. To depend on technology or international guarantees would be a reckless gamble. It would bring more instability, grief to the region. A the militarized Palestine is a fantasy. It's not going to happen. I explained before why the geography talks different. When we talk about defending, the common way of defending, we're talking about a security area and a main battle area. Since there's no depth, then there'll be no security area, and the main battle area will be on key terrain and vital terrain. In the movie we saw about road number 6, which is the biggest highway in Israel. But also, when you take a look at on Kfar Saba, Petach Tikva, Afula, most of them are very, very close to the Green Line. Not mentioning Jerusalem, which I showed before, will be easily cut off in a pincer movement from the north to the south, from the south to the north. Not to mention the new cheap, inexpensive type of armaments of drones and UAVs, which will leave Israel helpless. Okay, so let's say the geography doesn't work, and for any military defense it doesn't work. But let's say they have a responsible leadership. So let's talk for a few minutes about the responsible leadership. These are the emblems. We'll talk about the emblems in a minute. But when you take a look at the Hamas charter, the Hamas charter says in Article 6, the Islamic resistance movement is a distinguished Palestinian movement whose allegiance is to Allah, and whose way of life is Islam. It strives to raise the banner of Allah over every inch of Palestine. That's the Hamas charter. Okay, but let's say the PLO will take over. The PLO in Article 19 states the partition of Palestine in 1947 and the establishment of the State of Israel are entirely illegal, regardless to the passage of time, because they are contrary to the will of the Palestinian people, and to their natural right and their homeland, and inconsistent with the principles embodied in the Charter of the United Nations, particularly the right of self-determination. In other words, they're talking about the destruction of Israel, even though there was much talk about changing the Palestinian Charter. As a result of the Oslo Accords, there was a promise from Yasser Arafat to Clinton in the Y meetings, and at the end, it was never revoked. But before the words, we can take a look at the emblems. This is the Hamas. You can see the sword. You can see Al-Aqsa. Again, the whole Israel, from the river to the sea. Let's go to a less militaristic organization than PLO. Here, of course, you have the river to the sea. You have machine guns, and don't make a mistake, this is not an olive branch, it's a grenade. And when you take a look at the Popular Front from Liberation, also from the river to the sea, they're probably going to move us to what's here, which is called the Mediterranean, and of course you have the gun. So there's not much hope in with the Palestinian leadership. Not in its words and not in its emblems. Let's talk about the people. Maybe we can make a change with the people. So here we have a Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research, which is a Palestinian organization funded by a European organization. And he made Dr. Khalid Shkaki and Walid Ladadwe made a survey in June 2024. In other words, less than a month. And these are the results. When asked, in your view, was Hamas' decision to launch its offensive against Israel on October 7th a correct one or an incorrect one? Even now, on June 24th, 73% said it was correct. Who do you think who will end up victorious? Today, 79% say Hamas. Only 2% think that Israel will come up. So you can understand what happened to the deterrence of Israel with the Palestinians in the West Bank. Again, this is the poll which I'm showing you only the results of the Palestinians in the West Bank. Which scenario would you prefer? Again, from the West Bank, 64% think it's correct, the return of Hamas. That's the solution. And who are they happy with? Here, if anyone wants to take the last clip. Okay? That's not my 25 minutes.
You're excused.
Okay.
These are solutions for Gaza.
What? This is for solutions for Gaza.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, they still want the Hamas. Now, if you're asking about the Palestinian actors, who are they happy with? Who are they satisfied with the performance? So if you take a look, the first place, even now, is 82% Hamas and Sinwar. So from all this, we see that there's not much hope. Not from a geographical point of view, not from a military point of view, not from the leadership, and unfortunately not from the Palestinian people itself. So what's I think most important now, today, is to finish the job in Gaza. I think the implications of finishing the job in Gaza is a necessity, also for our deterrence, also it'll put a bar what happens with all the mistakes when you attack Israel. I think, well, it was mentioned before, and this is not my expertise, but there's a weaponizing of the legal system, and we have to place, which is placing law before life, and law is supposed to support the quality of life and not be a weapon to appease terror. The Palestinians, as was mentioned before, are using our liberal values, Western values, our Judeo-Christian values, and taking advantage of our liberties. I think the problem is not only a problem of Israel. There'll be many ramifications on this war and the outcome in the Western world and Western values. On October 7th, Israel received a painful wake-up call after a long period of having their eyes open, wide shut. I can only hope that the world will learn from Israel's painful experience and that you won't have to experience the same thing yourself. One of the main things that we have to fight with is the dice loading of the statutory interpretation of the law, which again is used as a weapon. If you remember what I talked about a few minutes ago, I was talking about 4 aspects. I mentioned 3, and now I want to mention the last one. I think with all the security, to talk only about security, I think is minimizing our arguments. I think even though it's not popular, we have an eternal biblical right to Israel. Jerusalem is mentioned 660 times in the Bible. It has been besieged 23 times over history, and a switch of governments 44 times. Israel belongs to us. I think to go back to a two-state solution would be the opposite of where history should go, dividing Jerusalem again. And I think there's a big significance of me being here in Hague, because I think there's one big difference between Hague and Jerusalem. If Hague is a city of law, Jerusalem is a city of justice. And there's a big difference between law and justice, and I will finish with 2 quotes. The first quote is from Cicero. The more laws, the less justice. And the second quote is from an American author, Elie Mozit. He said, "Never mistake law for justice. Justice is an ideal, and law is a tool." Thank you very much.